We believe we have assembled the dream team of experts to discuss some of the most important issues and themes that confront the economy and politics today and going forward all over the world.
We find ourselves at a moment when this gathering, I would say, could not be more urgent and relevant.
I guess what I would like to start with, we're talking about going beyond neoliberalism. Let's start with talking about what neoliberalism is.
I think neoliberalism is best understood as an attempt to free capitalism from constraints. And the feeling among neoliberals was that constraints imposed by the state were stymieing growth, that in order for capitalism to really develop and to achieve its greatest potential, greatest growth, greatest affluence for everyone, it had to be freed from those constraints.
The state becomes, under neoliberalism, very much instrumentalized, meaning it caters to the needs of business interests. It's those other constraints, so other constituencies and other imperatives, whether it's social democracy, whether it's equality, whether it's the environmental issues, those are the issues that get marginalized.
It's important to understand neoliberalism as a project that was global. It was a project which was about reasserting the power of capital over that of labor, so a class project in that sense, but it was also a project which was about disciplining the global south and various attempts on the part of newly decolonized governments to achieve development and actual political independence by implementing a range of policies which were considered to be threatening the interests of capital.
In the developing world, neoliberalism looked like a project of trying to roll back the various forms of state intervention that had been set up in the aftermath of World War II in order to develop these countries. So if before states were nationalizing their banking sector, if they were carrying out industrial policy through subsidized tariffs, if they were trying to have subsidized exchange rates in the neoliberal era, they were trying to leave those decisions to markets and they were trying to privatize the banking sector and other state-owned enterprises.
Post-neoliberalism means restoring capital discipline. This is basically what it means, and the question we're trying to figure out is how do we do that?
The creation of state capacity to discipline capital and shape markets for publicly desirable outcomes, development, equality, innovation, and sustainability. How could this capacity be generated, designed, and sustained?
Can you, as a state, find ways to discipline capital and ask banks to do things that are good for society and not just good for their own bottom line?
What you need to do is to try and push the agenda of states that reassert their authority over markets in a progressive direction towards realism, social democracy, and military de-escalation.
Disciplining capital means nothing other than putting in place, and it has been like that all over history, putting in place the mechanisms that allow for a democratic system to be conceivable. Because that's the essence of democracy. It's a political system where decisions and power do not belong to the wealthy, to the powerful, to the oligarchs. It's the other way around. And that's exactly the challenge that we have ahead.
State capacity is an attribute of the system that enables the public investment and public power, public resources to really be deployed in the way that supports private initiative and private markets and private capital, as Todd said, is aligned with the financial initiatives of and financial incentives of all the rest of us. In other words, a capacious state is not the state that dominates private markets. It's the state that knows how to direct and shape those markets in a way that would benefit everybody in the long run.
So that state control over investment capital is a key tool for economic growth and economic development, and we're starting to see countries in the global north become more aware of this advantage and slowly trying to create policies and institutions that copy what we have seen occur in the global south for decades now.
And the purpose of these kind of tools is to direct resources towards priority sectors or firms that are considered vital for long-run development, but that might not receive the resources that they need on private markets alone. These kind of directed credit policies are usually also accompanied by conditionalities on the recipient firms, which policymakers then use to steer investment decisions in accordance with their industrial policy objectives.
If they can do it in Brazil, we can do it in the United States. And so, I think that it's time for us to learn from other countries and to be inspired by the creativity and resilience of some of these countries in the global South that are finding ways to eke out successes.
The power of the multinationals, especially the big American tech companies, has certainly not aligned with national interests nor with the public good. And what we might end up with, and again, I'm taking a UK perspective on this, is a sort of international corporatist capitalism which respects the interests of these big companies much more than national industries.
Many sectors, including in technology, and you can just look at the big tech companies as an example, we're the very same companies involved in AI. In a lot of different areas, what we have seen are anti-competitive practices that they engage in that actually reduce innovation.
Yeah.
They reduce creativity. One of the mistakes that we see with AI is a kind of sense that this is a technology where either on the one hand, there's nothing we can do about it because it seems so new, which I think is wrong. Technologies are just technologies. The telephone was a radical new technology when it was new. The telegraph was a radical new technology. We don't think of them that way, but they were transformative. The railroad, similarly. And it turns out we can regulate these things. We know how to do that, and there's a long history of it.
Whether in the United States or in China or in the European Union or in this country, antitrust is an extremely powerful regulatory tool. It allows the government to take very interventionist measures, and that's make it like a very versatile, very powerful tool for the government to discipline, to restructure, to reshape the market. DeepSeek emerged because of government crackdown on quantum trading. Okay. Because DeepSeek is a quantum trading company, and because of the financial crackdown in 2023, the founder of DeepSeek has to pivot his business focus to something else. He has so much chips, so he started to use it to trade AGI. So thanks to the government's restriction on quantum trading, that created DeepSeek.
If we're thinking about how we're going to create a cohesive, inclusive, prosperous economy of the future that also generates good politics, I think the heart of it is exactly what Heather said, is just sort of, restoring the middle class. And restoring the middle class requires creating good jobs. That sort of jobs that provide a path towards a middle class existence and with dignified lives.
Why do Trump talk so much about manufacturing jobs? Yeah, because jobs are not just about wages. Yeah, it's about our identity. It's about our community, our security. That's what's appealing to the base. Yeah,
I think Danny has hit on something so profoundly and deeply important that it is worth making at the core of whatever this post-neoliberalism thing we are building is, which is that how people spend their time, what they are doing of value matters. That is humans, like the idea that somehow the robots are going to do everything and we're just going to take naps that doesn't gel, and it's also inconsistent with the last 100 years of history where we've had more technology, but people then do more we find other things to do. And so it does seem like there's this really deep and fundamental challenge. You've got the jobs that you're trying to create that give people value and meaning and dignity and all of that.
We need to have a system in which communities, companies, consumers, but also citizens have a voice. We need to move in some ways beyond a completely materialistic view of the world into a capture of the emotional needs, the moral needs, the spiritual needs of communities.
We are massively under-providing care.
Yeah.
So we're under-investing in it, we're under-providing it, we are underpaying the care workers. Basically, one of the big things we have to do is massive public investment in care, because this is not something the market will provide.
We shouldn't
keep talking about green industrial policy from a virtue signaling point of view, but really from and green industrial policies are not just an act of ecological intention. It's first and foremost an act of macroeconomic resilience, right? It's good policy for these countries in the long term.
In the Netherlands and also in many other OECD countries, we already started to decouple economic growth from environmental damage. Our economy produces more while using fewer resources on less land with cleaner air and falling emissions. The per capita use of resources in the Netherlands actually decreased by 20% since 2000. So we use less resources while also growing economically.
Decarbonization is basically being experienced as an economic boom in new technological systems and new types of jobs that are coming out. This energy transition is not going to be done by Wall Street, but it has to be led by states who want new growth models to fully transform their economies. Decarbonization is just going to require a lot of manufacturing. Everything that you can kick and touch has to be replaced. 1 billion machines that are currently burning carbon, 1 billion cars on our streets in every country, tens of thousands of blast furnaces that produce steel, tens of thousands of turbines that burn coal have to be replaced. This entire stock of polluting machines have to be replaced. UNCTAD estimates that these 17 sort of green technologies could be a market of $10 trillion by 2030.
One of the first things that we need to do to imagine politics in a post-neoliberal world is to break with that kind of collective depression, that kind of fatalism that turns the crisis of democracy into a destiny immediately.
These shifts are dangerous, they're turbulent, they're scary. The point is precisely to get in and fill and shape that vacuum so that you maximize the odds of the good movie version winning out over the bad movie version. And friends, it's not clear that we are winning.
Here's what keeps me up at night. How do we get people excited about using the state in positive ways to increase the general welfare? How do we generate enthusiasm for a different kind of market-shaping popular politics?
I think it's okay to say you have something against billionaires. That's a lot of money. You shouldn't have that much money. It gives you too much power, right? So I think being willing to sort of name names, and I think that what we've seen, in recent years is that a lot of the policy chops are coming from the Democratic Party, but the willingness to name enemies, I think we're seeing more from the Republican side.
So my challenge for us all is to think about how can we make post-neoliberal economics compatible with liberalism, rather than throwing out our liberal political order in pursuit of desirable economic outcomes. On the first hand, it's a post-neoliberal economics which enables state action and challenges the orthodoxies of the last 40 or 50 years economically, with a liberal tradition which supports fundamental human freedoms, proper institutional practices, a celebration and not a criticism of ethnic diversity.
Those moral arguments were really lost as these ideas were translated into policy during the Biden years. And I would argue that this lost in translation problem has had enormous political implications. That loss of a moral core was really the reason, a core reason anyway, that we never built a mass politics around these signature legislative and policy achievements.
In relation to your comments about the abundance agenda, I think the core problem for the abundance agenda is defining what is different about it from the politics of the Clinton-Gore era, right? This combination of targeted infrastructural investments mingled with targeted deregulatory actions that really just read to me like the politics of the Democratic Party in the 1990s. And one of the core challenges is that we've now had over 15 years of the failure of third-way politics to achieve electoral success across a broad variety of national environments.
Previously, left-wing revolutions happened because they otherized the elite classes and people who had wealth. Sometimes people have otherized the past as well and said we're going to be new. The question I have now is that if you are trying to be vague, like Keir Starmer is, because he doesn't want to tell a story, how are you going to sell your ideas in a punchy, powerful way without otherizing something? How are you going to have the clarity that actually transmits on social media? How are you going to have the brand or the idea that people actually actively choose in pick and mix politics, where they gravitate around single issues, not around entire parties. Because trusting an entire party means accepting that vinyl record and that authority of people in charge rather than expressing agency. And I don't know the answer to that, but I very much hope and pray that everyone in the room can find it.
The main challenge is the political challenge of bringing different constituencies together, elite actors with active grassroots support into a developmental coalition. Not easy, but it has proven to be indispensable in driving large-scale economic transformations of the type that is so sorely needed today.
We're still living in an interregnum between political orders if you accept that framework, which you don't have to do. There are powerful forces at work in the global economy, in domestic nations. We can see the outline of different political orders emerging. We can see the outlines of a progressive political order of the sort that the Biden administration was trying to put forward. And we can see clearly a MAGA political order taking shape day by day before our eyes. But nothing yet is given, nothing yet is certain, and that makes this gathering all the more important.